Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's session, Maximizing Your Investment in Lockpoint with Threat Hunting. My name is Sergio, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Lockpoint. And today I'm going to be your host for this webinar about threat hunting and how to use our Lockpoint solution for this at times daunting task. First of all, as well, I would like to explain that we're going to delve a bit more into threat hunting and how Lockpoint can help you with it. To help me explain especially the technical part of it, here I have with me Henrik Berggren, our senior sales engineer. He's going to explain how Lockpoint can help you and is the job of threat hunters and SOC teams alike. Perhaps we can just go through some practicalities. First of all, this session is recorded. In case you haven't noted, there is a little mention on the top of your screen. And at the same time, we are also going to use these slides later on to share them with you. This recording will be shared with you and also will be shared on our on-demand webinars webpage for those of you who couldn't make it today. Having said this, I would like also to talk a bit more about this agenda. Throughout this session, we're going to cover how threat hunting is today. Then we will talk about what organizations need to do to be effective in threat hunting, and then we will proceed with some of the benefits of Lockpoint Security Operations Platform called Converged SIEM. So later, my colleague Henrik will give you a demo on how to use Converged SIEM for threat hunting. Finally, and at the end of the presentation, after the demo, we'll be also taking some questions. We will be hosting a Q&A session. But if you have some burning questions along the way, I really encourage you to use the Q&A feature that you can just see at the bottom of your screen, and you can use it to drop your questions, and we will go through them during our Q&A session. Now, with further ado, let's start this webinar, and let's begin by talking about the current landscape of threat hunting. First of all, the job of threat hunting is a never-ending task. As we know, cyber attacks are always on the rise. So threat hunting do not have it easy, let's say that. Just to give you some numbers and just to give some context around the topic, I would like to explain that only in 2022, which is just a year ago, over 500 million ransomware attacks have been detected. And unfortunately, these attacks sometimes are targeting more and more small and medium-sized businesses. So that affects many businesses out there. The tough reality of this is that it's impossible to detect every single threat, every single attack. Combined with this wave of attacks, combined with this impossibility of detecting them all, organizations also struggle to find skilled personnel for this task. As I said before, this is a daunting task. It is estimated that threat hunting is performed in 29% of all deployed technology in use. And what this means is there is still a lot of land to cover for threat hunters. So when it comes to how to perform threat hunting, this can be done either reactively, which means after the detection of an anomaly or an alert, or proactively, looking for possible threats. However, when it comes to proactivity, this requires a lot of resource allocation in terms of time, in terms of technology, and also, as I said before, in terms of personnel, which organizations struggle to find. But in order for organizations to prepare for threat hunting, they first need to change the paradigm and move from what I said before, from reactive to proactive. How can they do this? Well, this is a mix of adopting a new mindset, investing in the right technology, and putting processes and methods in place. I will say that the first thing is that companies need to be on the constant lookout for threats. And as I said before, change their mindset from securing themselves if there's ever a threat to preparing themselves for when they get breached. And that's what I mentioned, to change the mindset from if to when, because there's going to be a breach, they will get breached, and attackers always look for the path of least resistance. Also, for that it's important that they're always alert or they are always on the lookout against known attacks, and they can look for them using the indicators of compromise and indicators of attack. As I mentioned before about proactivity, they need to proactively search for incidents, and they can do that as well using frameworks such as the MITRE ATT&CK framework. I will also say that it's important to keep an eye on abnormal behavior inside your network. For the success of threat hunting processes, I will say as well, they need to have the right threat intelligence. They also need to expand their visibility over their systems. Most importantly, encourage collaboration between the SOC team, whether it is built in-house, it is outsourced to MSSPs, or it's a hybrid model where you can just have certain functions that remain in-house and some others that remain outsourced. We talked before about investing in technology. So I would like to briefly talk about Converged SIEM, which is our security operations platform. And I like to describe Converged SIEM as an end-to-end security operations platform, as it covers the whole TDIR process, from detection to investigation to response to remediation, the whole end-to-end. When you ingest your logs, Converged SIEM automatically adds threat intel. We talked about threat intel before, business context, entity risk. So this all helps to enrich alerts for better investigation. It also comes with orchestration and automation capabilities. So it saves time to the SOC team, especially when it comes to those manual processes that are also very repeatable. So you can also customize playbooks. We have playbooks for our SOC capabilities. So analysts can use these playbooks to automate their investigation and response. Converged SIEM, as mentioned before, and I talked about the high visibility, expanding the visibility. It's perfect because you can reach to endpoints, application, and everything in your IT infrastructure. And because it's also a consolidated platform, there's you have the SIEM, the SOAR, UEBA. So there's no need to integrate different standalone products, right? SIEM, SOAR, threat intelligence, dashboards, UEBA, EDR capabilities, you name it. Even the ingestion of logs from business critical applications such as SAP. All these products feedback each other, which is, I think, the most important part. So they are not just like integrated or poorly integrated, but they are built on the same platform. So they feedback each other and they benefit from the contextual information and capabilities that they all have. And as an extra benefit, this also reduces the total cost of ownership, since you don't have to worry about knitting these different products together and also locking yourself with the different vendors. And now let's get into the fun part of this webinar. Today, my colleague Henrik is going to take us all through a few hypothetical scenarios in which threat hunting, which you can use Converged SIEM for threat hunting, and how it comes in handy when you do it with Converged SIEM. So I hand it over to you, Henrik. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can just share yours.
Thanks. Let's see. Cool. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Super. So yeah, thanks everyone, and welcome. It's great to see so many participating today. Before I get into the demo itself, I just wanted to set the stage a little bit, just adding on to some of the things that Sergio mentioned in his initial remarks. So when we're going to look at the demo today, I'm going to try to combine the different parts that we work with, the analytics, alert rules, SOAR playbooks in various ways. So a typical attack, could actually start with a phishing attempt. An attempt with a phishing email to grant some access to an account, and maybe thereby also getting access to the password hash for that user. So the password hash would be an encrypted version of the password. It wouldn't be the password in clear text. It would be the encrypted password. But that could in turn be used to trick other systems to believe that access is made by the proper person. And a way to do that is something called pass the hash, where you try to access other systems using that hash and getting access to more and more systems, which is called lateral movement. And once you have proper access to those systems, you can start exfiltrate data or deploy ransomware or something like that. So, for instance, ransomware attacks often start with a phishing attempt or a phishing attack. So that's why it's very important to try to mitigate this stuff at as early as possible, preferably in the phishing stage already. So when we use the analytics, they're all using the same syntax, the same query language in Logpoint. The dashboards, alert rules, playbooks, and so on. Everything is using the exact same syntax, which makes our job so much easier. So if you look at a phishing attack, Logpoint's response would be to detect this through logs in our endpoint protection systems, which could be anything really, Symantec, Trend Micro, Defender, or Logpoint's Agent X, or any mix of those, right? Or maybe the email server itself has indicated an attempted phishing email. So we'll receive those logs. We will process them in the way that we normalize them. We tag the information in logs, and we may also enrich them with information from external sources like via LDAP or other sources. Once we receive the logs, we may also have an alert rule in place that will detect this and create an incident. So that's sort of an alert in the SIEM platform itself. And that could, in turn, well, you could investigate this manually, or you could use it to trigger a playbook that will automate a lot of stuff for you, like building additional context, doing additional checks and processing on this alert, and maybe close it because it wasn't really anything you needed to take care of, or it could elevate the risk score and even do a response like disabling the user, blocking an IP address, stuff like that. And the playbook in turn will also document all this stuff in a case, so that you will get a summary of everything that the incident and the playbook has found during its investigation, and maybe also its response. So that's sort of the background to the demo. And the first scenario we're going to look at is just catching malware indicators of compromise, which could be in logs from various endpoint protection systems. So we're going to try to find those, maybe select a category that we think is really interesting to look at, and then maybe turn into an alert rule. So let's start with that. So here is the Logpoint system. This is our internal demo system. At the moment, I'm looking in the dashboard section. So there are a number of sections here. So you can see the dashboards, the investigation section, where we have both the incidents, the alerts, and also the cases if we run playbooks. We also have something called search templates, which I'm going to get back into, but which are really helpful in investigating back and forth between different parameters. So we're going to get back to those. We have the search, where we can just go in and just Google away in the logs and start our investigation there. We have the UEBA, which is the machine learning part. We have the playbooks, and we have reports. So these are the different parts of the user interface. Now, the first part here, the dashboard, in this case, we're looking at some alert information. And Logpoint has been using MITRE ATT&CK framework for a number of years now. So the alert rules that we provide will be tagged with MITRE ATT&CK information with tags. And when you create your own alert rules, you can also tag those with the corresponding relevant MITRE ATT&CK tags. And one of the big benefits is that then you can build dashboards like this, where you will see in which MITRE ATT&CK categories you have activities right now. So from the left here, you see, if you take our demo here into context, you have reconnaissance, you have initial access, maybe through a phishing email. You have some other stuff going on here until you get credential access, and you can start your lateral movement. And then at some point, you also can start exfiltrate data or apply ransomware or whatever. So by sorting your events into these categories, you will get a really nice overview of what you have going on in your system. So let's start from scratch. I'll just take for granted that you know a little bit about Lawfront. So I'll go into the search section. This is where we can see just search all the logs. So I'll just type label equals malware. Malware. So when we receive the logs from our various sources, we have the raw logs in black down here. And then we have all the tags that we have added to pretty much the same information as you see in black in the raw log we have up here, but it's been tagged, with a username, a domain, an action, an event category, and so on. And we can also see how many logs that we have that correspond to our filter here, the malware filter, over time. And at the left-hand side, we can see how many different values some of these fields have. So for instance, we can see there are 4 different malwares, some ransomware stuff. There are 4 hosts involved. There are a number of hashes. There's also somewhere down here, a couple of users. So this is sort of where we can start looking at what we have to work with. One field is called action, which could be in an interesting field to investigate. If I expand here to the last 24 hours, 24 hours, that should be. And try again, because I believe we do have some quarantined workstations. So if I click on this value here, that gets added to my search query up here. Here I can see now there are a number of quarantined workstations. Actually, these 2. So from here, I can just create an alert rule that will show me, that will indicate when something has been quarantined. So if I, first of all, take my logs here, my 700 logs, and I type a pipe sign, I can then push the results from this filter here into any of these functions here. One is called latest. So let's find the latest log from for instance, the log source itself, the workstation in question, maybe the user obviously, and the host, and maybe also the let's see, the domain. And we know the action is quarantine, but I'll add it anyway just for fun. Sure, latest by should be here. So here are the latest logs that have unique combinations of these. And now I can sort them if I like. So I can do another chart count. And I'm going to add the log timestamp here, or when it actually happened. Then I'm just going to copy this stuff. So now I have a nice table, right? And it might be that I'm only interested in the semantic stuff, not the demo thingy here. So I'll just click on semantic to get a filter for that. And from here, I can just go right over here and create an alert rule that will inform me when semantic has detected a quarantined machine. So I'll just call this quarantine workstation. And for those of you who have been with us for a while, you can see that this dialog box has been upgraded and really spiffed up in the latest version here. So first of all, we have our query here, the one I just did, but then down here we also see we have to choose the repositories. So I'm just going to remove everything and just add the security repo. That's the one that is interesting in this case. Then the time range that we're going to look at, the time window, depending on how crucial and critical this is, you might want to increase this window. I'll just keep it at default at this time. Going to do flush and trigger, which means that if we get an alert from this rule, it's going to just start over from the beginning with fresh sort of initial values. And then if I do this, I can also say that if I get an alert on a specific user, I don't want to have another one within at least the next 30 minutes. Then you can see it's red up here, so I need to also add a criteria. And in this case, I'm going to just say that if this is bigger than 0, if I get any response on this query that I just made, I want to have an alert. I can also add my MITRE ATT&CK tags here. So let's say phishing or whatever. And then the next one, I can give it ownership. So I can say that this is assigned to maybe the NOC user. And it can be administered by the administrators and the SOC people. Right, and then I just create it. So that's how easy it is to create an alert rule for something very specific. Now, this could now be investigated manually, or it could be used to trigger a playbook to do things automatically. I can also, right here in the alert itself, set it up so that it sends an email, makes an SNMP trap, sends that to your network monitoring platform, or runs a script or whatever. So that can be done right here and now without invoking the playbooks as well. All right, so this is sort of the first part of the demo. You could also take this table directly and just add it to a dashboard. So you could just say quarantine workstations. And we put it into, let's give it a day. And then we can create a tab in our dashboard. I call it demo. And I just mark that tab on my dashboard and click finish. So that's how easy it is also to put it on dashboard. So you keep this, if you have a SOC, for instance, that you have always been aware of what's going on there. All right, so that was sort of a warm-up exercise. We can also use as a processing log called threat intelligence. So there's a built-in function to use external threat feeds in log points. So if we go in and just have a look what it looks like. So here we are in the plugins section. And here's the threat intelligence plugin. So here you can actually subscribe to threat feeds from all these different kinds of sources. You know, even your own custom stuff, or let's say MISP, which is quite common, commonly used. We also have vendors like Emerging Threats, Critical Stack, and Recorded Future, and so on. So there's a number of these you can integrate with. And once you've done that, as you could see here, I should maybe show that. As you can see here, we have a table of almost 200,000 entries at the moment. I can then go in search again and just say, let's say source address equals star. So these are all my logs with source addresses, and then I'll push those with a process called TI. So this is the syntax, process TI. And maybe these are my internal source addresses, by the way. So I can say in homenet. So if I have a list that defines my internal network, I can take all my internal source addresses, and then I can process the threat intelligence feeds against my destination addresses. Destination address. And this plugin also works as a filter, so it will only pass through logs that sort of match against my threat intelligence. So here you see these red fields have been added. These logs have been enriched with threat intelligence information, with a threat score and so on. So you could filter anything above score 75 or something if you want. You could also process it again just by pushing it through GUIP. Destination address, so we can see which countries that are attacking us. So now we also have some country enrichment, and we can, of course, again, do a chart count by country name. for instance. So we can then see that it's coming from the US and Germany in this case. So that's sort of external threat feeds. You can also work with something called tables and lists. So if we go into lists and tables, and maybe look at malware lists. So these are all malware lists that you can check your information in your logs against. And the syntax again is very, very simple. If I go into search, oops. I just say, if you have logs that has a hash field like this. So here are a number of logs that have hashes. We want to see if any one of them are known bad ones. I can just say hash in malware hash. Then I will only get logs that match where the hashes match against the contents of that list that I have. And as you can see, it's pretty quick. Lists are very, very fast to work with. So that's another bonus. So you have lots of ways you can customize and adapt your own lists of IOCs and so on when you're searching for these kind of things. And then, of course, you can automate them, turn them into alert rules, trigger playbooks, and so on, like we're going to look at now in the next section. This one is going to look at phishing, and we're going to sort of assume that we have some kind of a product detecting the phishing attempts, like I said, the endpoint protection systems we talked about. That would then create a log that indicates a phishing attempt, and we'll turn that that has been turned into an incident through an alert rule and triggered a playbook. So we're going to look at how that could look in real life. So again, if we go into incidents, so we have lots of those, and here's the one I just did, you can see. And if I click on view data, I get that stuff right up on my screen. So that's why it's so super helpful, really. But if we go back to incidents and search for our phishing, any incidents related to phishing, we see we have a few here, and the one on top here says possible phishing mail detected, not flagged by email servers. So this is probably picked up by Defender or something else. And if I click on view data, again, I can see the data that is behind this particular incident. There's even a file hash here, right? So, so we could investigate that right here and now. If I click on the search, I get into the search window again, and we have our hash here somewhere. Where is it? Here. Sometimes we go blind when you do these things. Hash. Oh, here it is. So I'll just try to run this through VirusTotal. You can just click on this little arrow next to the value. So just check this against VirusTotal. And yeah, sure enough, it did trigger a lot of engines in VirusTotal. So that's how easy it is to manually check it. But it would be nicer if this was all done in a playbook immediately when this happens. So we know that we have the incident. I also happen to know that we have a trigger for a playbook that is matching this. So in the playbook session, under triggers, you can find the triggers that have been defined. And one is called phishing email detected not flagged by email service. If I click on that, I can see that it's triggering based on the ID or the name of the alert itself. And if it triggers, it will run this playbook here. And you can run multiple playbooks, as you can see here, in one go. So if you then look at the monitoring, well, we can look at the playbook first. So phishing. So here's the one, phishing not flagged by email server. This is a playbook that does a number of steps. So you can just imagine having to do these manually. So the alert fires, it triggers the playbook, and this immediately kicks in. So first of all, it will fetch all the incident data through an API in Logpoint. It will run some scripts. It will type something into the case. So the case item here will actually document some stuff into the case. And then it will run a reputation check on both the IP, the hash, the URL, and the domain through VirusTotal. And depending on what it gets back, it will now either sort of just close the case, or it will escalate it, send an email, maybe increase the risk score of this event, and so on. So that's what's happened when you run this playbook. And if we look at the monitoring here, because we know we had the incident some time ago. So if I go in here and look for phishing, we have it here, and we can see it ran 8 hours ago. You see that over here? And here you have the runtime. So if I click on this, I actually get the playbook up, and all these little green dots means that it has been successful and has been running through. And these green dots also meant that it got something back from VirusTotal, obviously. So if we go into a case now and look what it found, we'll just search for phishing again. Here it is, 8 hours ago. This is what the case looks like. It was triggered, and it showed us some trigger data here. This is all the information it got back when it did the API call to get all the trigger information. So you can trigger on anything in this. You can trigger on the status, on the risk score, on anything you want. And it also detected some artifacts, which are the sort of typically the domain name, usernames, IP addresses, and so on. It sent some of these to VirusTotal. So here we can see what it sent. It sent this IP, this URL, this domain, this file hash. And then we got the result back. And we can see that VirusTotal returned that it was flagged by 81 engines, which is quite severe, right? So in the next step, we would send an email to the SOC analyst with all that information in the text in the email. We would add some additional artifacts. We might also do this. So this would be also in the email to the analyst in this case. And we would also change the case severity to 90. That was all done automatically by the playbook when this happened. And as a final step, you might want to, for instance, disable the user in question in Active Directory, for instance. And you could add that to the playbook itself, or you could run it here manually just by clicking add around the playbook. And as you can see up here, you can also change the criticality of this. You can change, you can say this in progress, I'm taking care of it. Now it's the case changed. So you can see now it says that I'm in charge of the case, and I can then manually run a playbook. So let's say disable. I can run this disable AD user playbook and just enter the name of the user here and run it right away, and it will disable him. Or I could add it to the playbook so it's done automatically. So so that was what I was planning to show you. I have a third case. I'm not sure if I have time for this, Sergio. Are we still on time?
I will say not. I mean, unless it's a short one. But other than that, it seems like we are a bit running out of time.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you, Henrik, so much. These demos have been fabulous. And very insightful. Let me share my screen. I'll request. Yes. Okay, so I can just go back. So we can start our Q&A session. Again, thank you, Henrik. And it seems that we already have some questions from the audience.
Great.
However, in case you don't know how to submit your questions or you have forgotten, let me remind you and let me encourage you to use the Q&A feature. It's here on the lower side of your screen, so you can do it. But the first question, is there any other information about threat hunting, and where can I find it?
Okay, there's information both on our website, and we are actually in the process of publishing some step-by-step demos that you can work through yourselves. So I think the first one's already there. So that's one place to look at this. There's also the documentation site, docs.logpoint.com, where you will find information about some of these things I showed you, including some of the integrations with the threat intelligence vendors like Recorded Future, for instance, which has some excellent technology. And we have a very extensive integration also with Recorded Future if you really want to go down into the nitty-gritty details. And they show an incredible amount of information. And we have sort of replicated their scorecard in Logpoint. So you have everything on screen. Plus you can, from that, just link into your portal at Recorded Future and get even more information. So that will be some of the sources that we have.
All right, then we also have another question here is, what about licensing? Gigabytes per day or events per second?
No. Licensing, well, the different parts of Logpoint are licensed a little bit differently, but the basic license for the SIEM, which is normally based from other vendors, is based, like you suggest, on the amount of data you ingest. We only license it on the number of log sources. So if you have 500 log sources, we can give you a price, and that's going to be the price, regardless how much data that will generate or how many Logpoint systems you establish to cover those. If you can do it with one server, that's fine. If you need more than one, that's fine too. We don't care. It's just the number of log sources. The SOAR, the automation engine, is licensed on the number of concurrent users. And one such user is included in the basic license. So you get one for free, and it's included in the basic installation as well. So you always, all of you Logpoint customers have access to the SOAR, as long as you don't need to be more than one person at a time working with it. If you need to do that, you can buy additional seats in the SOAR. The UEBA, the machine learning, is based on the number of entities you want to analyze, which might be a subset of all your users. If you have 25,000 users, maybe you only need to analyze 5,000 of them that are sort of more sensitive in some way or other. So those are the basic licenses, really. Super simple licensing scheme.
Wonderful. Also, there was another question regarding other examples and demos of the use cases we have mentioned. And yeah, let me remind you, everyone, we have done other webinars like this one regarding ransomware and data exfiltration. And you can just see these ones and other webinars by going to, I think it's logpoint.com/webinars. So where you can find all the series of webinars we have been doing since October and also prior ones.
But
I
also have the master classes on top of that goes into depth about certain things, like 1 or 2 hours long.
Exactly, and the master classes. Thank you, and also tons of content as well that we keep on writing. You can just find every in our blog as well. Someone else also regarding the licensing went back and asked, is the SIEM solution available on-prem and cloud?
Yes. So first of all, you can run Logpoint on-prem, on physical hardware or in virtual environments. You can also run Logpoint in cloud, so you can run it in AWS or whatever you want. And you can also buy Logpoint as a service where we run it in the cloud. So all of those possibilities are there.
Wonderful. Seems like we don't have any more questions from the audience. In that case, I would like to thank you all for your questions. Also, I would like to mention that we have reached the end of our webinar and also the end of this series of webinars that where we have covered topics, as I mentioned before, like ransomware, data exfiltration, and today threat hunting with Henrik. In case you missed them, and as I mentioned again, you can learn more about them by visiting logpoint.com/webinars. You can find these ones, others, also about emerging threat reports that we continuously write. So you have it all. But then again, thank you so much for today. Thank you for joining this webinar on maximizing your investment in LogPoint with threat hunting. It's been a pleasure. Probably it's a bit early, but happy holidays and happy new year when you get to it. And until we see again, thank you and bye.